10 tips for surviving a toxic family gathering. It's the time of year when families are getting together. And when you get together with family, sometimes you could be left with some emotional trauma. And some people actually, after a family gathering, they have to go for counseling for several weeks before they get right in their mind again. Sometimes, somebody can be, a toxic person can be really, really nasty and emotionally abusive. And when you have to go through that, it's really hard to take, and it takes a while to recover from that. And so there are some steps that you can take in order to not have to go through that. And I'm going to go through, I don't know how many there are actually. There's about 10 tips here that I have that will help you to successfully go to a family gathering and not have to suffer the emotional trauma. And one of the important things I think you should know before I get into that list is that all our relationships are a reflection of our relationship with ourselves. So if we do this self-work, then what happens is that we change, and all relationships are a kind of like a chemical reaction. And we're one of the chemicals that get in there, and how we act in a certain situation and around a bunch of people will affect how those people act as well. And so if we change the way that we act, and we act differently than we normally do in a typical situation, then we're going to get a different result. So if we change what we do and who we are, what we believe, and how we act, then you're not changing the other people, but magically they do change. You can't change another person, but you do have 100% control of yourself. Well, most people don't actually, and it takes quite a bit of work. I use hypnosis to help me get more in control of myself. And hypnosis is a great tool for doing that. So when you're going to a family gathering, your first tip is to show up late. And that goes right along with tip number 2 is leave early. See, if you compress the amount of time, instead of staying for 5 hours, you're only there for 2 hours, a lot less things can happen. So just reduce the amount of time that you're there, and that'll make a big difference. And also, before you go, make sure you set the intention. So when you set the intention, you're going to talk about or think about the things that you want, the outcomes that you want. So don't talk about what you don't want. Uncle Bobby's going to say such and such and do this and that. Well, you know what? That is going to manifest that. It'll happen for sure if you talk about it. So don't talk about the stuff that you don't want, because that's how you manifest stuff. So talk about what you do want instead, and set the intention to have a peaceful family gathering. Show up late, leave early, and everything will be great. So those are the top 3 tips. And if you do those, that'll put you on a good start. The next one is to don't argue, criticize, or explain anything. You haven't won up to this point. You're not gonna. So get over it and don't worry about it. That's your need to be right as well. So if you give up the need to be right, and that's a really tough one. I went through that. I had to get over that need to be right with other people and then try to enforce my beliefs on them. And that never works. That brought me a lot of grief being like that. And so don't do that kind of stuff, and then you won't have that problem. And don't try to make your point and try to change anybody's minds. Because, again, people are set in the way that they are. And the only way that you can actually change somebody's mind, first you have to be in rapport with them. And once you're in rapport with them, then you'll be able to have a conversation. You'll be able to make your point, but that doesn't guarantee that you'll be able to change their mind, but you'll have a better opportunity if you're in rapport. So unless you're willing to go into rapport with somebody, don't bother trying to change their mind. Simple as that. And when you say something, be direct about it. Don't beat around the bush. When you beat around the bush, it irritates a lot of people, and that draws out a lot of stuff. So when you beat around the bush, you get yourself into trouble. Don't do it. Be direct. And if you can't be direct and say something direct with it, then maybe you shouldn't say it. And another thing is not to talk about other people behind your back. So don't have a conversation about this person over here with this person over here and talk about them. One thing is that there's a lot of people out there that will, it's not a good thing to do. If you got something to say about somebody, you got to say it directly to them. And if you can't say it directly to them, then you shouldn't. And if it's hurtful, then you shouldn't be saying it anyways. If you don't know how to actually give proper feedback, that'll help you to, if you really need to do that, you need to learn how to give feedback in such a way that people aren't going to be offended by it. Okay, and then so don't engage in conversations with others. Be direct. Don't beat around the bush, and don't try to please anybody, and don't try to get anybody's approval. Because, when you try to do that kind of stuff, especially from a negative standpoint, if you try to please somebody, then your actions that you take, it's kind of a negative vibration, and you get the opposite of what you want because you're focusing on what you don't have. And so don't try to get somebody's approval, and don't try to please them. And any negative feelings that you experience are information and data about yourself that you can collect and use that later on to work on yourself. And so next time you're around these people, then anything that goes on is about you. So you fix that, and the next time you go and see them, you can see what you've actually been successful at clearing up, and monitor yourself that way. So the more stuff you clear up, the less bad times you're going to have, the more good times you're going to have, because you could turn that toxic atmosphere into a good atmosphere if you really wanted to. Because it's all about you and the way you act. But if you can't, limit your time there as much as you can, and follow these tips here, and you'll have your best possible time, and you'll be able to at least survive, if not enjoy yourself at a family gathering. And hypnosis is a great tool for getting over these kind of things and getting yourself set in the right kind of space to deal with this kind of stuff. I've had to deal with a lot of stuff in my own head and work a lot of things out. And the hypnosis has been my biggest resource, my biggest tool, most helpful tool to get me to overcome and become more the person that I'm supposed to be, rather than, what I became when I was limited, when I was beat down and all that other stuff was going on. When I was the victim, then all that stuff that was happening to me, I've gotten over the majority of it. Have I gotten over all of it? Well, every time I go to a family gathering, I find out whether or not I've gotten over everything. and that's how I measure this stuff. And when you work on yourself and you go into these situations, everything changes for you. The whole dynamic changes. And you can become invincible, so that when you go into those situations, nothing hurts you. It's 100% possible, and hypnosis is the best tool for doing that. And if you want to talk about hypnosis and find out whether or not hypnosis can help in your situation, then go to my website at jeffbroomfield.com, and you can register for a free strategy session. And we'll talk about whether or not this hypnosis is right for you, whether or not it can help you become that survivor and become the creator of your own universe. So you don't have to worry about all that crap that goes on with these other people, that toxicity. You can be your own boss, and that stuff won't hurt you anymore. So go and check out my website, and make sure you give me the thumbs up here and subscribe and all that great stuff. And till next time, have yourself a good one.